Hello, my name is Tristan Thomasart. I am a student at the North Georgia Blairsville College, and I am a student in the Early Childhood and Development program. And today I am going to tell you everything I learned in this purple section. And everything I learned in this thing, I have written on this here notebook that I will read off to you now. So, starting with chapter 1, studying the young child. So, children from birth to 8 years are considered young children. A newborn learns to expect attention from others in their environment. An infant becomes aware of their body and of things in their environment that they can control. A toddler is more interested in exploring. A preschooler accomplishes many routine tasks. Relationships with adults are critical to young children's healthy growth and development. Each adult who works with young children needs to study those children closely, and adults need to know as much as possible about each child in order to plan appropriate learning environments. In Chapter 2, we learned how play, technology, and digital media and disabilities affect learning. An important task for those who work with young children is to be sure that these children are assisted in every way to maintain their desire to learn. The desire to learn appears to reflect a natural motivation that children have to solve problems, figure out how objects work, and complete tasks they set out to do. With the right kind of presentation, by age 3, a children can learn from electronic media. However, children continue to be influenced by electronic marketing and advertising, so parents must place limits on children's use of electronic media. Parents should also control children's viewing so that they can know what's good and bad. In Chapter 3, we learn factors affecting learning. So adults need to proceed with caution in using rewards. Providing concrete awards or verbal rewards creates motivation to behave properly just to get rewarded rather than because it makes the child feel good. To make the child feel good, the goal is to develop a desire within the child to learn through the development of internal motivation. A major goal is to promote cognitive and social competence, as feelings of competence occur when one feels confident in success. Gay parents and non-parental care can also have an influence on young children's learning. In Chapter 4, we learned about the parental period, birth, and the first 2 weeks. Several types of prenatal environment influences can affect the fetus. These can be classified as nutritional, maternal characteristics, experiences, personal habits, drugs, and disease. Pregnant women should always plan ahead, such as regular medical checkups, which can discuss to them the many factors that might endanger an unborn child. The newborn goes through many changes within very short time, and once they're born, the child must be watched carefully. It is essential that the newborn's vital signs be monitored. With the Apgar scale, the team ensures that the baby is ready for life. In Chapter 5, we learned about infancy and a theory that's the environment, health, and motor development. So Erickson's theory is that a child passes through various crisis stages while developing. so the child must develop trust. Freud's theory is that early experience has specific effects on later behavior. Bandura's theory is that children extract and integrate what they find out through their social experiences. Rogers and Maslow's theory is that parents' accept towards their child are critical during infancy. They should also accept that it's typical to sometimes have negative feelings towards their child. Paget's theory is that the stage where children learn to use their senses. Vygotsky's theory is developmental change occurs rapidly during each crisis period and may result in educational problems because something new is developing. And Skinner basically just built a baby tender. In chapter 6, we learned about infant cognitive and affective development. Cognitive development focuses on how much babies know and how they go about learning. Sensory competencies underlie the infant's ability to progress through the various stages of cognitive development. Affective development has been the focus of a great deal of research. Rhythm and reciprocity attachment, interactions with adults and peers, and temperament and the caregiver's role in infant and mental health and emotions and cultural factors have all been studied. In chapter 7, we learned about the toddler and autonomy development. The major task for toddlers is to seek autonomy as they move towards independence. Toddlers want to do what older children and adults do and to accomplish these goals by themselves. Toddlers have a strong drive to push ahead and use newly developed locomotor skills, but they must also develop self-control and learn to use these skills within the limits set by their environment. In chapter 8, we learned about physical and motor development. During the preschool and kindergarten period, children should become more proportional in height and weight if they receive proper nutrition. Physical fitness is of great concern. A classroom atmosphere that is warm and nurturing contributes to young children's positive mental health. Motor skills development is closely aligned with physical growth. As the body grows physically, muscles develop and mature, and the child is able to perform new motor acts because physical activity is so essential to normal development and learning that children who are limited in these capabilities are at a considerable disadvantage. In chapter 9, we learned about the cognitive system and concept development and intelligence. So the term cognitive pertains to the mind and how it works. The cognitive system is made up of three parts. Cognitive functioning, which is how the cognitive system works. Cognitive structure, which includes all three parts of the system. And cognitive development, which refers to changes in cognitive structure and functioning that may take place over time. Concepts are the building blocks of cognitive structure, and they form the basic parts of the child's cognitive structure. And intelligence is the ability to benefit from experience. That is, the extent to which a person is able to make use of their capacities and opportunities for advancement in life. In chapter 10, we learned about oral and written language development. Language is often defined as a system of symbols spoken, written, and gestural that enables us to communicate with one another. Our knowledge of language is basically unconscious. That is, it, it is something we learn through the natural course of everyday life. Those who study language and are interested in how language and thought relate. Those who take the environment learning perspective believe that much of human thought is dependent on language. Words aid in communication, but they also help children better understand the world and the things in it. Therefore, the more words the child knows, the more advanced his or her cognitive development will be. In chapter 11, we learned how adults enrich language and concept development. Adults are responsible for scaffolding the child's movement through the zone of proximal development, while providing an environment for exploration that supports the child's construction of knowledge. The concept of intentional teaching emphasizes a balance between child and adult guided instruction. Child guided activities are selected and controlled by the child, but the materials are often provided by the adult with a goal in mind. As the child explores, the adult may comment or ask questions as a means of scaffolding the play. Adult guided activities are selected and controlled by the adult. The adult must have in mind not only goals and objectives, but also a selection of possible strategies for instruction. In chapter 12, we learned about affective development. Affective is defined as the area that centers on the development of social, emotional, and personality characteristics and self-concept. Each of the major theorists had some interest in affective growth. For Sigmund Freud, Erik Erikson, Carl Rogers, and Abraham Maslow, affective growth is the center of attention. Freud's theory is concerned with personality development. Erikson's psychosocial theory centers on the effect of social environment on personality development. Rogers' theory emphasizes self-concept development, and Maslow also emphasized self-concept development through self-actualization. So his was different, basically. Albert Bandura's social learning theory focuses on the emotional and motivational aspects of thinking. Jean Piaget's social theory focuses on the relationship between the individual and the social development. And Lev Vygotsky viewed cognition as a social activity. With social activity, with social experiences shaping how people think. In chapter 13, we learned how adults support effective development. So, when following the NAEYC guidelines, adults also need to keep in mind that another important aspect is establishing reciprocal relationships with children's families. An important element of this guideline is that teachers acknowledge a family's choices and goals for the child and respond with sensitivity and respect to those preferences and concerns, but without abdicating, sorry about that, the responsibility that early childhood practitioners have to support children's learning and development through developmentally appropriate practices. Adults should also keep in mind the specific experiences and cultural backgrounds of the children. Background factors such as economic hardship, family ecology, and racial ethnic socialization influence the effective development of young children. In chapter 14, we learned about preschool to primary, bridging the gap into the primary grades. So, in the early years of schooling, kindergarten and primary years, young children are passing through the second transition period. Symbolic play serves as a vehicle that supports children's development from purely concrete activity to connecting the concrete with the abstract. Kindergarten is more like what first grade was in the past, as the curriculum has been pushed down. So apparently, kindergarten was originally the first grade. Unfortunately, play is not part of many of today's kindergarten programs and is seldom included in the primary grades. Lack of play opportunities represents one of the major factors that create the gaps among preschool, kindergarten, and primary education. And finally, in the final chapter of this class, chapter 15, we learned about primary grade development. So, growth, health, nutrition, safety, mental health, and health education are all factors and elements that represent primary grade development, as it's how a children positively develops. Frost, Worthman, and Raphael point out that by school age, gross motor skills improve, which is evident in children's greater flexibility, balance, and agility. School-age children can participate in organized sports and games that require coordinated movements and thinking in order to remember the rules of the game. Fine motor skills develop to meet the requirements of school activities such as writing and drawing, computers and video games also require fine motor skills. And that right there, my friends, is how a child develops. And I really hope to be working with you guys soon in the future. Thanks for watching.